We'll continue our cold winter at Valley Forge for the Continental Army. Just kind of review this a little bit for Alec and Ray Lynn. We stated yesterday that about 2 months after the American victory at Saratoga, one of the worst winters in history settles in on the American colonies, and General Washington and his Continental Army have got to find a place to settle in for the winter, and they choose a spot 20 miles northwest of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's a village called Valley Forge. So Washington takes his 11,000 American soldiers to Valley Forge, and they're going to try to survive this horrible winter there. We mentioned yesterday, I believe, that there was a supply line system that was provided by the Continental Congress that was supposed to bring supplies and those types of things to Washington's army at Valley Forge, but that supply line got completely broken down because, after all, it is wartime. And as a result, the soldiers at Valley Forge had no supplies, no medicine, no blankets, or no food during this horrible winter. I think that's where we ended yesterday, right? Well, those guys got so hungry, they started eating tree bark and had to melt the snow for drinking water. They got so hungry, they started eating tree bark and were basically melting snow for drinking water. You got to remember, Valley Forge is virtually an ice box. Did you notice in the video where the guy was warming his feet up with his socks over the fire? Did anybody see that? That's because he didn't have any shoes. So a lot of these soldiers have no shoes. Their shoes are wore out, okay, from the battles, and they have no new shoes coming in. Their clothing is wearing out. They have no new clothing coming in, okay? So if you can imagine having inappropriate clothing as far as warmth goes, no shoes, and it's virtually an ice box at Valley Forge. And as a result of that, many soldiers either died of freezing to death or disease that they got because it was so doggone cold there and they got sick. So there's going to be some American casualties at Valley Forge with soldiers either freezing to death or dying of disease. How many soldiers did he have at Valley Forge when he started?
11.
Approximately 2,500 died during the winter. Approximately 2,500 of those soldiers died during that cold winter because of lack of food, medicine, clothing, blankets, etc. Now, Congress is trying to fix this broken supply system, but it's taking too much time, and Washington has got to get food for his troops now, or they just simply aren't going to survive. He lost 2,500 the way it was. Well, as he's wondering if he'll even have troops to fight in the spring, he has no idea that a rescue party is heading his way. Anybody knew who part of that rescue party is going to be? Somebody must have done a report on this person.
Yeri.
Did you? Yeah, but who did the report on Han Yeri? Did you? What did Han Yeri do?
Well, I just have from him at the Battle of Oristani. That's the only part that I got of him.
Okay, well then you'll get some more information. Okay, what happened is this rescue party that's heading to help Washington is an Oneida tribe led by War Chief Han Yeri. It's the Oneida tribe led by War Chief Han Yeri. So Washington has no idea that a rescue party is heading his way under the leadership of Han Yeri, the Oneida tribe. Now, do you have, let's just kind of stop and talk about this. You have Native American people or Indian people that are still living in the area of the colonies. And they're making a choice on which side they're going to support in this war. Most Indian tribes are supporting the British. Why?
Did the colonists out of there?
Well, partially, but what would you say, Wyatt? Whoa. Why?
Get the colonists out of there.
Well, that's what he said, and that might be partially true, but how would I try to make an example of this? If I've got to support Riverton's football team or Worland's football team, and I just happen to be living in between Worland and Riverton, I just happen to live right in the middle, and I'm going to pick which one to support. Which one am I going to support?
bigger
The
one?
better one.
The better one, right? The one that's going to win. Well, that's what the Indians did. They chose the British because they felt the British would win the war. And would they benefit more if they supported the British and the British won? Obviously. Well, it just so happened that the Oneida tribe and Han Yeri chose side with the Patriots because he thought a Patriot victory in the American Revolution would better serve his people. If the British won, he didn't believe his people would be treated very well. So he chose the American side, thinking that, hey, if the Americans win, we're going to get a lot better deal than if the British win. So he gets word that Washington and his troops are struggling at Valley Forge. So what he does is he carries 600 bushels of white corn over 400 miles to Valley Forge. So Han Yeri and the Oneida Indians, because they are supporting the Americans in this fight, carry 600 bushels of white corn. Now, I'm not a farmer. How much is 600 bushels? That's a lot. And they carried this over 400 miles to Valley Forge. Now, why is that risky? What are they avoiding along the way with all these bushels of white corn?
Indians that
The
wanted
British and who else? Other Indians who are not supporting the Americans. So they have to travel this 400 miles with this 600 bushels of white corn, facing the opposition of British soldiers and Indian tribes that are not on their side. Well, this white corn becomes a lifesaver for Washington's starving soldiers, and it allows them to hang on until Congress fixes those broken supply lines. So here's another unsung hero of the Revolutionary War. Without his services, the soldiers at Valley Forge may lose many, many more than 2,500 during that bad winter. Han Yeri and the Oneida tribe. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, that'll take us to tough discipline for the Continental Army and aid from France. Here we go. Okay, tough discipline for the Continental Army and aid from France. Now, do you remember in the video, what was some of the problems with Washington's Continental Army?
Their 1 year thing was up.
Well, and that was a problem, but the victory at Trenton helped him. They ended up re-upping, remember? But what did they say about the Army in the early stages of the war? There's a separation between militia and Continental Army, right? Militia was more interested in protecting their homelands, but they would fight with the Continental Army. But how did they label the Continental Army early? What? Well, the D word, undisciplined. Okay, they're an undisciplined group of rabble. Well, when they get out of Valley Forge, once they've recovered from their ills at Valley Forge, George Washington's soldiers are going to learn something all brand new to them. Discipline. Okay, they are going to be disciplined. And I don't mean disciplined by being punished. They're going to be trained to be much better disciplined than they were prior to that. Now, the man that's going to be responsible for instilling this discipline among the Continental Army was a Prussian soldier by the name of Baron von Steuben. Baron von Steuben is going to be basically hired by General Washington to train and instill some serious discipline in his troops. So once recovered from their ills of Valley Forge, General Washington's soldiers will learn something new, discipline. The man responsible for instilling the discipline among the Continental Army will be a Prussian soldier by the name of Baron von Steuben. So what is he really in a lot? He's maybe not this, he's not a mercenary so much because he's there to fight, but he's certainly a soldier of fortune. He's out for hire, right? And so Washington hires this 47-year-old drill master. It's almost like a drill sergeant in the Marines. So at the time of his hiring by Washington, Baron von Steuben is 47 years old. He has a reputation as a drill master. He's an unemployed soldier of fortune looking for a cause. And George Washington has given him this cause. Okay? He's a 47-year-old drill master, unemployed soldier of fortune looking for a cause, and von Steuben's going to find the cause when Washington hires him to whip his motley patriots into a well-oiled fighting machine. So what they're going to do after Valley Forge is they're going to be trained. And he trains them hard, and he puts them through the rigmarole. Well, once von Steuben finishes his training with this Continental Army, they're going to leave Valley Forge a professional fighting army. They will no longer be an undisciplined rabble. They will be a very well-tuned, fine-oiled army of professional soldiers. Now, as was mentioned in the video, the victory at Saratoga by the Americans in October of 1777 was a turning point in the Revolutionary War, because this victory convinces France, hey, maybe these guys have a chance. Maybe we should join their effort for freedom, because any weakness of Britain is going to be in favor of France, right? So, early in 1778, as mentioned on the video, the King of France welcomed Benjamin Franklin to France to try to court this alliance between France and America. So after the Battle of Saratoga in October of 1777, France believes maybe it is time to join in on the American cause in the Revolutionary War, and the King of France invites Benjamin Franklin to France, and he's going to try to court an alliance between the two countries. Well, after courting France for a period of time, on February 6th of 1778, the two countries signed two separate treaties. So, after courting the French for a period of time, on February 6th of 1778, the American colonists and France signed two separate treaties. Two separate treaties.
February what?
February 6th, 1778, the American colonists and France signed two separate treaties. One is a commercial treaty, and the other is a treaty of alliance. One is a commercial treaty, and the other one is a treaty of alliance. A commercial treaty and a treaty of alliance. Okay, what's a commercial treaty? What they sign when they signed their commercial treaty? Cody?
Trading rights.
Trading rights, that they are going to trade exclusively with each other. They're going to give each other favorable trading opportunities, okay? So we're going to trade together. We're going to be fair with each other. So they're going to sign an agreement that gives each other favored treatment in matters of trade. If they have to make a decision on whether they're going to trade with the Netherlands or France, who are they going to pick? France. Even if the Netherlands may be charging them a little less, they're still going to go with France. So the first treaty was a commercial treaty where both sides agreed to give each other favored treatment in matters of trade. What's a treaty of alliance? What's that? Well, can't fight each other, but more importantly, they're going to bond together and be allies. Okay? I'll give you some examples of that. Now, if you're going to have a treaty of alliance, I'm going to get something and you're going to get something in return. That's how treaties work. So, France agrees to recognize the independence of the American colonies and to wage war upon Great Britain until America is free. That's what France is agreeing to by this Treaty of Alliance. That they're going to recognize that the American colonies are independent. They're going to recognize their Declaration of Independence. And they agree to wage war upon Great Britain until the colonies are totally free. That's what France agrees to do.
So it's Britain is going to be fighting two wars?
Well, they're going to be fighting, kind of. They're going to be fighting a war in the colonies against France and Great Britain, or France and the American colonies. Now, this is going to be key that you remember this later. Okay? In return, America, what are they going to give in return? Well, they're going to agree to defend the French West Indies. They're going to agree to defend that. You know where are the West Indies? Where are the West Indies? Anybody know? The islands around the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. Okay? In this area here, the West Indies. Now we call it Cuba and Panama and all that kind of thing. Well, those islands that they knew as the French West Indies were islands south of the Gulf of Mexico, Florida area that France owned. Now, France is a long ways from the West Indies, are they? And they're going to have a hard time protecting that land that's really important. And there's reasons we'll get to later why they wanted that land. Well, this is key because according to this alliance that gets them to come over and help us in the Revolutionary War, we're saying that we will defend the French West Indies against enemies of France for like ever. Well, later in history, you're going to see that that's going to become a problem for us. Okay? Just keep that in mind. So, France agrees to recognize the independence of the American colonies and to wage war upon Great Britain until America was free. And return, America agrees to defend the French West Indies. They also agree to never make a separate peace with who? Great Britain. They agreed not to make a separate peace from Great Britain. Both of those promises, later in history, when we become the United States of America and get into a conflict with Great Britain, is going to come back to bite us. Okay? So we'll just remember that. Now, when we get that fight, so remember when I told you to remember about the Treaty of 1778 and the French Indies? Okay. Now, what else would France give America? Simplistic. Yeah, soldiers, supplies, etc., right? Now, they gave them soldiers, supplies, and equipment that would equal $13 billion in today's money. So they really helped us out, okay? They recognize our independence. They say that they will fight the British until we are free. They give us soldiers, supplies, and equipment to the modern equivalent of about $13 billion. They also give us one of their best military officers, Marcus de Lafayette, to provide leadership for the Continental Army. They're giving out a lot here, right? They're recognizing our independence. They're coming to help us wage a war upon Great Britain until we're free. They're sending us soldiers, supplies to the modern equivalent of $13 billion. And they're giving us one of their greatest young officers by the name of Marcus de Lafayette, who will provide leadership for the Continental Army. And he's going to be key in the latter stages of the Revolutionary War and what he does. He will be very important for us. And what are we giving in return? A promise to defend the French West Indies and to never make a separate peace with Great Britain. And what that means is you can't make a peace with Great Britain without making a peace with who? France. And France has to be getting along with Great Britain for us to ever make a separate peace. You see what I mean? Which is probably not going to happen. So it's a big commitment on our part that's going to come back and bite us later on. So, with this said, for the first time, other than the Lexington and the Concord of the South, the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge, the Revolutionary War now is going to move to the south. We're going to move to the south. Okay? Everything's been where? Where's all the fighting been?
North.
North, with the exception of that one skirmish at the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge. So now the American Revolution, once France enters, the war is going to move to the south. Okay, that'll take us to kind of an interesting story. America actually is going to take the war to mainland Britain. What does that mean? We're going to go and fight on British soil. I don't think a lot of people know this. So America takes the war to mainland Great Britain. we are actually going to make an assault upon the mainland of Great Britain in the Revolutionary War. Anybody know we did that? Anybody know we went to Great Britain?
Heard it.
Yeah, I think you will. It'll make sense a little bit later. Okay, on April 11th of 1778, April 11th of 1778, an American naval commander by the name of John Paul Jones leads a small detachment of 2 boats from his ship, the USS Ranger. Okay, so on April 11th, 1778, an American naval commander by the name of John Paul Jones has a ship called the USS Ranger, and he's going to take 2 boats from that ship and try to raid the mainland of England. Okay? On April 11th of 1778, an American naval commander by the name of John Paul Jones, who owns a boat called the USS Ranger, is going to take 2 boats from that ship and try to raid the mainland of England. Now his mission was to raid a port called Whitehaven, England. He's going to raid this port called Whitehaven, England. There's 400 British merchant ships anchored at Whitehaven, England. So Commander John Paul Jones is going to take 2 boats from his ship, the USS Ranger, and he's going to try to raid a port called Whitehaven in England, where there are 400 British merchant ships anchored.